This is the second part of my critique of Jarrah White's video, Moonfaker LRO Laser Retro-reflector Oddity. Jarrah, let's review what you've done so far in your video. You introduced it by saying there were various oddities regarding LRO. Then you described how Lola works by bouncing a laser beam off the surface of the moon. It gets altitude readings and maps the lunar topography. Then you screeched off into a strawman argument implying that somebody claims that you can't bounce lasers off the surface of the moon. Nobody says that. Nobody ever has. You made up a stupid strawman so that you could blow it down. Then you showed Mythbusters getting a laser reflection off of a retro-reflector on the moon. But I guess you wanted us to notice that they didn't read any reflection off the surface. The equipment isn't intended to do that. Then you went on saying that Mythbusters and propagandists, whatever that is, are claiming that it is impossible to get a reflection off the surface of the moon from the Earth. And you've proved them wrong with 2 articles, which nobody has ever disputed. This is just a lie. That's what you've done so far. The whole first half of your video proves absolutely nothing, and we have not seen anything yet that would be called an oddity. I'm not going to assume that you're stupid. I'm going to assume that you think your audience is stupid. Now let's look at the rest of your video and see what other grievous logical fallacies and misrepresentations you have in store for us.
Once again, far from proving NASA's past moon missions were real, LRO has effectively shot NASA in the foot, this time by discrediting what is considered by many to be one of the strongest pieces of evidence that men went to the moon.
At this point, anyone watching your video would be totally lost. In fact, I think you're totally lost. It looks like you got halfway through this video and quit for a couple of weeks, and then came back to finish it without going back to listen to what you had already said, because what you just concluded has absolutely nothing to do with what preceded it. You have spent most of your video so far going to great pains to prove what everybody already knew, that you can shine a laser on the surface of the moon and record a reflection. Incredibly, from this, you conclude that the laser reflectors, which are at the Apollo landing sites, can no longer be used as evidence that man went to the moon. What you've done is the equivalent of claiming that your opponents believe that the Earth doesn't orbit the Sun. Then you found a couple of articles which state that it does, and you claim glorious victory by fallaciously setting up this strawman argument, when everybody knows that the Earth does orbit the Sun. And then, from that, you draw the following conclusion.
Thus we have demonstrated that most marsupials are indigenous to Australia.
Mythbusters used the presence of retro-reflectors on the moon as evidence that Apollo was real. This doesn't absolutely prove that humans went to the moon because, as you pointed out, the Soviets put a couple of reflectors up there using unmanned probes. But when you consider all of the other evidence around those missions, it becomes unreasonable to challenge the legitimacy of the Apollo program and the placement of these reflectors on the moon by people. In any case, in your zeal to discredit LRO, you have tied it in with this retro-reflector argument, and it is totally moot. It has nothing to do with it.
The LRO's laser instrument, in addition to the experiments conducted by MIT and the Crimean Astrophysical Observatory, long predating Apollo 11, prove that you don't need a reflector to bounce lasers off the moon.
Which is something that is already known, as you pointed out, for some reason. And your main theme of this video, LRO and Lola, have nothing whatsoever to do with this conclusion. Incredibly, you are actually claiming that because LRO bounces a laser off the surface of the moon, that the retro-reflectors we left there 40 years ago were not necessarily put there by astronauts. You could have achieved the same end in 10 seconds by simply stating that you don't believe the presence of laser reflectors on the moon is proof that humans were ever there. But you're not done butchering common sense and reason. There's more.
Of course, the propagandists have long since switched horses. They now claim you can bounce a laser off the moon, but not to the same degree of accuracy as with a reflector.
Switched horses? I can't find damn lie in my list of fallacies. We have always known that laser reflectors are more accurate than bouncing it off of the surface of the moon from 400,000 kilometers away. That's why we put them there in the first place. This is completely irrelevant to LRO, and the only thing it says about Apollo is why we put reflectors on the moon. It says nothing about whether we used manned or unmanned missions to put them there. And now you quote a YouTuber.
I never said the retro-reflectors proved manned missions.
Finally, something we agree on.
Yes, I think it's good that you should be right about something. And let's give credit where due. Your video was very well produced. It's kind of a waste, though, because nothing you said in it leads to any of the conclusions that you made. Your goal was to discredit LRO and the Apollo missions at the same time. So you used a lot of spurious, irrelevant, illogical, and even misrepresentative arguments to achieve that. The bottom line is that LRO's altimeter laser, Lola, has nothing whatsoever to do with Apollo, no matter how many ways you flip it. One doesn't need to make an 11-minute video simply to say, marsupials are indigenous to Australia.
In addition to the photos, there are various other oddities concerning the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter.
You really do need to pay more attention to what you say in your videos, because darned if I can find anywhere in this video that you showed oddities with the LRO. The only oddity you've demonstrated is how your mind works.